The storm begins. The wind screamed across the frozen wasteland. Snow fell hard from the gray sky. The ground was white, the air full of ice. It was a deadly storm, the kind that could take a life in minutes. She walked slowly. Her legs shook. Her feet, wrapped in torn cloth, were bleeding and cold. The alien mother held her small child close to her chest. He was wrapped in old fabric, his face pale and weak. His breathing was soft and slow, too slow. She looked around. Nothing but white. No trees, no buildings, no signs of life. Only the storm. They had escaped the labor camp 2 nights ago. Her name was Vera. She had no weapons, no food, and no home. She had one thing, her child. He was all she had left. Her people had been slaves for generations. No one had ever helped them. No one had shown mercy. Not even other aliens. And definitely not humans. Vera had heard stories about humans, brutal warriors from a strong planet called Earth. She had seen pictures in old books. Their eyes were cold, their hands strong. They didn't care about weak species, but now she wished for any help. Her child coughed in her arms. His skin was like ice. "No," she whispered, holding him tighter. "Not yet. Please. Hold on." Her vision blurred. She hadn't eaten in days. Her body was weak. But she couldn't stop. If she stopped, he would die. Suddenly, she heard something strange. A soft sound, like an engine. It was coming from behind a hill of snow. Vera froze. She hid behind a broken rock and peeked out. A glowing light moved through the storm, a small vehicle. It hovered just above the snow, pushing through the wind. It had markings, words written in human language. A human machine. Panic filled her heart. What if they took her back? What if they killed her? She stepped back, but her child gave a small, sharp cry. "Shh," she begged, trying to hush him. Too late. The vehicle stopped. A figure stepped out. Tall, wearing thick armor. The face was hidden behind a glass mask with lights. The human looked around. Vera's hands shook. Her child was not breathing well. She had to choose, stay hidden and let her child freeze, or risk everything. She took 1 step forward. Snow crunched under her foot. The human turned. He raised a scanner. It beeped. He looked at the small figure in her arms. Vera held out her child. "Please," she said. Her voice was weak. "Help, my son." The human didn't speak. She waited. The cold bit her skin. Her legs gave out and she dropped to her knees. "Take him," she begged. "Even if you leave me here. Save him." The wind screamed again. Then the human stepped forward. He knelt down. His hands gently checked the child's pulse. He looked at Vera. His voice was deep but soft. "He's alive," the man said. Vera's eyes widened. He took off his thick coat and wrapped it around the boy. Carefully, he picked him up and turned to Vera. "Come," he said. "There's a shelter nearby." Vera stared at him. She didn't understand. Why wasn't he hurting her? Why wasn't he angry? The human reached down and offered his hand. She flinched, then slowly took it. Together, they walked toward the vehicle. Snow, blowing around them like ghosts. Her legs barely moved, but she followed. For the first time in her life, someone had helped her. Inside the warm cabin of the vehicle, she sat quietly, watching the human check the child's condition. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. The man looked at her and gave a short answer. No one should die in a storm. His name was Mason. She would remember it forever, and in that moment, surrounded by wind, snow, and silence, Vera felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Vera sat quietly in the back of the human's vehicle. The warmth inside made her body ache, and it had been too long since she had felt heat. Her skin stung as it thawed. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes stayed on her child. He was wrapped in the human's thick coat, his small chest rising slowly with each breath. His skin had a little color now. That was all that mattered to her. The man, Mason, drove the snowspeeder through the storm. The engine hummed low. Outside, the wind howled like a monster. He hadn't said much, just short words, calm, cold. Like the storm didn't scare him. Vera didn't trust him, not fully. Humans were known for their power, their control, their cold judgment. Why was this one different? She looked at him closely. He had removed his helmet. His face was rough, with lines that showed he had seen war, but his eyes weren't cruel. They were tired? And something else? Gentle? Where? Are you taking us? She asked. There's an emergency shelter, Mason said. A few miles from here. We'll make it before nightfall. She nodded, though she didn't understand why. He was helping her. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't ask where she came from, and that made her even more nervous. No one ever gave anything without asking for something back. Vera looked out the window. Snow was falling harder. The world outside looked like a white void, empty and endless. Suddenly, the vehicle slowed. What is it? Vera asked, her voice tense. Mason frowned. Something's wrong. He tapped the screen in front of him. A red light blinked. Power drain, he muttered. External signal. Someone scanning the snow. Vera's heart stopped. They've found us, she whispered. The hunters. Mason turned to her. Who? She looked at him, her voice shaking. The ones who own the camps. They track escapees. If they know I'm with a human, they'll come faster. Mason gritted his teeth. We keep moving. He tapped a button. A hidden shield slid down over the windows. Lights turned red inside the cabin. The snowspeeder changed direction and picked up speed. In the back, Vera pulled her child closer. Her thoughts were spinning. Should she run when they stopped? Hide again? But then she looked at her son. The coat around him still carried the human's warmth. That warmth had saved her boy's life. She bit her lip. Outside, dark shadows moved through the snow. Small hovering drones, shaped like metal insects, scanned the ground. One passed over them. Inside, the scanner beeped again. Mason cursed under his breath. They're using old tech. I can jam it. He pressed a few buttons. The scanner screen blinked, then went dark. Did it work? Vera asked. I don't know, he said, but they'll know someone is hiding something. The vehicle raced across the snowfields. Ahead, a hill of ice stood tall. Mason steered the speeder behind it and slowed down near a hidden door in the ground. We're here, he said. He opened the hatch, and cold wind hit them like a punch. Mason lifted the child carefully, still wrapped in the coat, and led Vera into the shelter. The door sealed shut behind them. Inside, it was small, just one room. A heater, a small bed, a med kit, a supply crate. Vera looked around. It felt safe. Mason placed the child on the bed and pulled out the medical scanner. He's stable, he said. Low body temp, weak, but he'll recover. Vera sat beside her boy, her hand shaking as she touched his cheek. Thank you, she said quietly. Mason didn't answer. He sat across the room watching her. You were right, he said. That wasn't a natural scan. Someone wants you back. Vera nodded. They always come back. Mason leaned forward. Why'd you run? She looked at him, her voice low and bitter. Because they made us work until our bones cracked. Because my child was born in chains, because I wanted him to live free, or even if I die. The room went quiet. Mason's jaw tightened. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said something that surprised her. No one should be born in chains. She looked up at him sharply. His voice was firm, His eyes held anger, not at her, but at the world that did this. Vera saw something she didn't expect. He wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't just a human. He was something rare, someone who cared. Outside, the wind howled louder. Inside, something warm stirred in her chest. Not fear, not pain, but trust. The shelter was quiet. The only sound was the slow beep of the humans' medical device and the low hum of the heater. Warmth filled the small room, but Vera still sat frozen, her back against the wall. Her child lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, his little face peaceful now. He was breathing better. His fingers had color again. He was alive, and it was because of the human. She didn't know how to feel. Fear still gripped her heart, but another feeling had begun to grow inside her. Confusion. Why would a human help her? Help her child? They had never shown her people anything but power and silence. Across the room, Mason sat on the edge of a supply crate, checking his weapon and tools. He had removed his jacket, revealing the black and gray armor underneath. His shirt had the earth symbol stitched to the sleeve. He looked up and caught her staring. "You hungry?" he asked. Vera didn't answer. Mason pulled out a ration pack, opened it, and placed it gently on the floor between them. Then he backed away and sat down again. She waited, watching him. Was it poisoned? A trick? Her stomach growled. Finally, she picked it up and took a bite. It tasted strange, like dried salt and metal. But it was food. She ate slowly. Her hands trembled. Mason spoke again. "I don't know what they told you about humans, but not all of us are monsters." Vera said nothing. She just kept eating. He leaned back against the wall, his voice softer now. "My job is search and rescue. I don't care what species you are. If you're breathing, I help." Vera looked at her child. He wasn't breathing for long. Mason gave a small nod. "He's strong, like his mother." She blinked. No one had ever called her strong. Just a slave. Just another body to be used. "What's his name?" Mason asked. She hesitated, then said, "Tiva." Mason smiled a little. "Good name." Vera finally asked, "Why do you care?" His smile faded. "Because someone once saved me too." She tilted her head, confused. Mason tapped the scar on his neck. "War injury. I was left behind. Enemy planet. One of theirs helped me, even when I was the enemy." He looked at her with tired eyes. Goodness doesn't always follow rules. Vera stared at him. He wasn't lying. But before she could say more, a loud beep rang through the shelter. Mason stood quickly and ran to the scanner. A red light flashed. "Motion alert," he said. Vera stood up, fear rising again. "They found us?" Mason pulled a small screen from the wall and pressed a button. Outside in the snow, two figures moved near the shelter. Tall, metal-cloaked. Not human. "Drones?" Vera whispered. "No," Mason said. "Trackers." Her heart dropped. "I told you," she said. "They never stop." Mason grabbed his gun. "They're scanning. If they find the door's heat signature, they'll alert others. What do we do?" He looked at her, sharp and calm. "We hide. If they enter, I protect you. Got it?" She blinked fast. "You'd fight for us?" He nodded once. "I'm not letting them take a child back to a cage." Before Vera could reply, the shelter lights dimmed. Mason hit a button to reduce energy signals. He turned to her. "Go, sit by your son. Don't make a sound." She obeyed. The two of them waited. Minutes passed like hours. Footsteps echoed outside. A shadow crossed the small view window. Then, silence. Mason held his breath. The scanner blinked green. "They're leaving," he whispered. Vera exhaled hard, tears burning her eyes. Mason didn't smile. "They'll be back." He looked at her again. This time not as a stranger, but as someone who had made a decision. "We stay the night," he said. Then we move. There's a safe zone 30 kilometers east. Too far, Vera said. With the child? I'll carry him, Mason interrupted. But we leave before sunrise. She nodded slowly. As he turned to check the supplies, Vera's eyes softened. She had run for days, afraid of everyone. But this human had shared his coat, his food, his shelter, and now his protection. He was not what she had feared. He was something else entirely, someone her people never believed existed. A friend. The storm outside had slowed, but danger was growing. Inside the small shelter, Vera sat beside her sleeping son. His chest rose and fell in a soft rhythm. His skin was warm now, no longer frozen, no longer dying. She gently brushed a finger across his forehead. She had almost lost him. Across the room, Mason packed supplies. He moved fast and quiet. His eyes scanned everything, the door, the scanner, the snow readings on his wristband. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Why do you keep checking? Vera asked. Mason didn't look up. Because they're not gone. Vera's heart tightened. I jammed their signal, Mason said. But one of them stayed behind, watching, waiting. She stood slowly. They know you're helping me. That puts you in danger too. He finally looked at her. I know. Vera stared at him, confused. Then why? Why do this? Mason paused for a moment, then answered. Because when you see something wrong, you fix it. That's what humans do. At least the good ones. Vera lowered her head. Her people had stopped believing in good long ago. She looked back at her son. He was the reason she had risked everything. He was the reason she had run from the camp, across mountains and ice, through freezing winds. She had been hunted every step. They called us useless stock, she said quietly. Said we were born only to serve, to clean, to carry, to die. Mason's face hardened. They bred us in camps, she continued. Made sure we stayed weak. Gave us nothing. We didn't even have names, just numbers. She touched her son's hand. I gave him a name. I called him Tiva. It means light in my old tongue. Mason listened without speaking. They tried to take him, she said. Said he was too small, too weak, not worth feeding, so I ran. She looked up. I don't regret it. Even if I die out here, I'd rather die free than watch my child fade away in chains. The silence that followed was heavy. Mason finally stepped forward and knelt beside her. You won't die, he said. Not today. Not on my watch. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time she believed it. But the moment shattered when the scanner beeped, fast and sharp. Mason jumped up and ran to it. The screen showed movement. 3 targets. Fast. Armed. They're here, he said. And they're not scouting this time. He grabbed his rifle, opened a hidden compartment, and pulled out a small blaster. He tossed it to her. Vera stared at it, unsure. You know how to use one? She nodded slowly. Her hands remembered the weapon from the escape. She had only fired once. But if it meant saving her son again, she would not hesitate. Mason shut off the shelter lights. We can't. Stay. If they surround the exit, we're trapped. He lifted Tiva gently and strapped him to his chest using his gear harness. The child didn't wake. He was resting deeply. Mason opened a floor hatch. A tunnel led into darkness. Emergency exit, he said. Only goes one way. Long and cold. But it'll get us away. Vera followed him down without a word. The hatch closed above them, sealing the light away. Darkness swallowed them whole. They moved fast through the tight metal tunnel. Vera's hands scraped the walls. The air grew colder again. They climbed down ladders, crawled through pipes, and followed faint lights Mason activated on the walls. Behind them, a dull boom echoed. They breached the shelter, Mason said. Vera didn't look back. She pushed forward. When they finally reached the end, Mason kicked open a frozen panel. Snow blew in. They were outside, under the cover of thick ice boulders, far from the original shelter. "We'll move northeast," Mason said. "There's a ridge we can use to stay hidden." Vera nodded, but something moved on the cliff above them. A figure, tall, armor-clad, a hunter. "Down!" Mason shouted. A plasma shot hit the snow near Vera. Heat and smoke exploded. Vera rolled, raised her blaster and fired back and shaking but steady. The shot hit the rocks near the hunter, making him duck. Mason fired twice and hit the cliff edge. The hunter disappeared from view. "Move," Mason said. They ran. Through the ice, through the pain, through the storm that had returned. As they moved, Vera didn't feel weak. She felt fire. They wanted her to be afraid, to break, to crawl. But beside the brave human, with her child safe on his chest, she found something else. Fight. And she would not stop now. Snow exploded around them as another plasma shot slammed into the ground. Mason pulled Vera down behind a frozen boulder. His breath was heavy, fogging the cold air. Tiva, still wrapped tightly against his chest, didn't stir. He was too weak to wake. Vera crouched beside them, clutching her blaster with shaking hands. "They're close," Mason said, scanning the ridge with narrowed eyes. "Too close." "How many?" she whispered. "3, maybe 4. Trained, fast, not the usual slavers." Vera's heart pounded. "Then who are they?" He didn't answer. He just adjusted his rifle and looked at her with serious eyes. "We hold them off, or we don't make it." Vera stared at him. "You could leave. Save yourself." Mason gave a short laugh. "And leave your kid? Not a chance." For a moment, she just looked at him. A human, cold, powerful, dangerous. Yet, here he was choosing to stand and fight for someone like her, someone no one else had ever stood for. The wind screamed over the ice fields, but it wasn't as loud as the fear in her chest. Then she heard something. Footsteps, crunching snow, moving fast. Mason stood and fired over the boulder. 1 shot, then 2 red beams of light cut through the storm. A scream echoed. One of the hunters was hit. Vera peeked out and saw 2 more coming from the left. Her hands shook. She raised her blaster, but her fingers froze. Memories crashed through her mind of her last time holding a weapon, of the punishment, of the pain, of being beaten for thinking she could fight back. "You're not a soldier," they had told her. "You're just a tool." Mason's voice broke through the memory. "Vera, you have to move." She blinked. Another plasma bolt smashed into the boulder. Ice rained down over them. She grabbed her blaster tight, and this time, she fired. The bolt hit the hunter's leg. He stumbled, screamed, and fell into the snow. Vera ducked again, breathing hard. "You got him," Mason said. "Nice shot." She didn't smile. This wasn't about pride. This was about survival. Another shadow moved. Mason turned and suddenly gasped. A beam of energy scraped his side. He fell to one knee. "Mason," Vera cried. "I'm fine," he growled. "Just burned armor, nothing deep." But blood was already soaking through the side of his suit. Vera didn't think. She grabbed his rifle, stood tall, and fired 3 times. 1 shot missed. The second hit armor. The third, straight through the enemy's visor. The hunter dropped with a crash. Vera ran to Mason and knelt down. She pulled a bandage from his pack and pressed it against the wound. He winced but stayed quiet. "Still think I'm not strong?" she whispered. He looked at her and smiled. "You're stronger than anyone I've known." A sound behind them. Another attacker. The last one. Vera raised her rifle, but the figure paused, raising both hands. Not to shoot. To speak. "You don't know what that child is," the alien said. Its voice was distorted by a helmet. "You think it's just a boy? He's rare, He's valuable. His blood could rewrite evolution. Vera stood in front of Mason and Tiva. I don't care what you think he is, she said. He's my son. The figure took a step forward. Vera didn't wait. She fired. The final hunter fell to the snow, smoking. Mason slowly stood. His arm held his side, but his eyes were full of pride. You just saved all of us, he said. She looked at her hands. For so long, she thought they were made for chains. Now she knew they were made for protection, for strength, for love. Together, they limped across the icy plains. Every step was pain, but every step was closer to freedom. Night fell, but Vera didn't fear it anymore. She walked beside a wounded human who had once been a stranger, and now felt like the only person who ever saw her as more than a slave. Her son rested quietly. And she? She had become something new. In the snow. Not a victim. Not just a mother. A warrior. The stars were hidden by clouds and the wind returned, colder than ever. Vera pulled Mason's arm over her shoulders. His weight was heavy, but she didn't complain. He limped beside her, holding Tiva tightly to his chest. The child was still unconscious, but warm and breathing. That was all that mattered now. They had survived the fight. But the snow wasn't done with them. They had 30 kilometers left to reach the human outpost. Vera didn't know what waited there. More soldiers, more fear. But she followed Mason's directions because he hadn't failed her once. And she had no other path. Don't slow down, Mason said through clenched teeth. Blood still leaked. From his side, you shouldn't be walking, she replied. He gave a weak smile. You shouldn't be carrying me. But here we are. The snow crunched under their feet as they crossed a frozen river. Ice cracked below them, but they moved fast and light. Vera could barely feel her toes anymore. Her legs burned with every step. How far now? She asked. Mason checked his scanner. 8 clicks. Maybe less. Then we run. Mason looked at her. You'll collapse. I'll crawl if I have to. She pulled him forward. But then, a sound. Faint. Mechanical. Not the wind. They turned. Behind them, high on a ridge, a dark shape moved. Not a hunter, but something worse. A ship. Black scout craft scanning the snow. Its lights flicked red. A siren echoed through the valley. They're sweeping the area, Mason said, looking for heat trails. Vera's eyes narrowed. Then we leave no trail. They left the main path and slid down a steep slope of ice. The fall was rough. They tumbled through sharp snow and hit frozen rocks, but it took them off the scanner's path. Vera's hands were raw. Her knees bled. She didn't stop. They crawled into a small crevice between 2 cliffs. The wind didn't reach them there. It was dark and silent. Hidden, Mason leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His face was pale. Sweat froze on his skin. You need help, she whispered. He shook his head. Not now. Keep moving. Vera didn't argue. She checked Tiva again. His breathing was steady, still warm. She looked at Mason. Really looked. His armor was scratched. His skin was marked with scars. But he hadn't once complained. He had protected them, fought for them, bled for them, and now he followed her. Why are you doing this? She asked. He looked at her. Because you and your son deserve to live. No, she said. You don't know us. I don't need to, he replied. I just know you're worth saving. Vera looked away. Her people never heard words like that. They were numbers, tools, shadows. Mason reached out and touched her arm gently. You don't need chains to be trapped, Vera, he said. Sometimes it's the way others see you that becomes the cage. She blinked fast, fighting tears. We're getting out of this, he said. All 3 of us. Suddenly the scanner on his wrist beeped. Not from behind, but ahead. Another signal. Another ship. Vera stared at him. They're in front of us too? Mason checked quickly. It's different. The code. It's human, she gasped. The outpost? He nodded. They're sending a patrol. Hope sparked in her chest, but then Mason fell to one knee. He groaned and dropped his rifle. Blood soaked his armor again. "No, stay awake," she shouted. She pulled the boy off his chest and held Mason up with both arms. "You got us this far," she said. "Now it's my turn." He smiled faintly. "Don't let them shoot first. Wave something bright." Vera looked around. She tore off a red cloth from Mason's first aid pack and tied it to her blaster. Then she stood, alone, holding Tiva close in one arm and the red signal high in the other. She walked out into the open snow. The wind howled. Then, shouts. 3 human soldiers rushed toward her, rifles raised. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She stood strong and shouted, "He's hurt! My child, he's sick, don't shoot!" The soldiers paused. One of them ran a scanner over her. "It's the rescue signal," he called out. "It's Mason's beacon." They lowered their weapons. Moments later, Mason was lifted onto a stretcher. Medical bots rushed to work. One soldier gently took Tiva from Vera's arms. The leader, a woman in command armor, looked at Vera. "You're safe now," she said. Vera looked down at the snow, and then up at the stars. For the first time, she believed it. The outpost sat like a gray fortress against the snow. Tall steel walls, warm lights glowing from inside. Human soldiers moved with purpose, guarding the gates. Drones flew overhead, scanning for threats. It was safe. It was warm, but for Vera, stepping inside felt like walking into a dream she didn't trust. She followed behind the med team that pushed Mason on a stretcher. Her arms were empty now. Tiva had been taken gently by a nurse and wrapped in heat, blankets. He was stable, sleeping, healing. Still, her heart beat with fear. Everything in her life had taught her one rule. When something feels kind, prepare for cruelty. The last time someone had smiled at her, it was before she was sold. She didn't know what would happen now. Mason's stretcher was rolled into the medbay. The doctors worked fast, sealing the wound, giving him fluids, scanning for damage. Vera stood outside the glass, gripping her own arms. A voice came from behind. "You're the one he protected." Vera turned. A tall woman in command armor stood there, helmet tucked under her arm. Her face was lined, serious, but not unkind. "I'm Commander Lorne," she said. "This outpost belongs to Earth's humanitarian corps." "I don't know what that means," Vera said quietly. Lorne stepped closer. "It means we don't leave people to die, no matter what species they are." Vera blinked, unsure. Lorne looked at the med room. "Mason's one of our best. Tough, quiet, doesn't break rules unless it's for a damn good reason." She looked back at Vera. "So if he risked his life for you, I'd say you matter more than you believe." Vera didn't know what to say. Her throat felt tight. Lorne continued, softer now. "We scanned your child. He'll live. Just needs time and warmth. We'll make sure he gets both." Vera whispered, "You'll let us stay?" Lorne nodded. "For as long as you want." Vera dropped to her knees, not out of weakness, but because her legs couldn't hold the weight of relief. For the first time since she escaped the camp, no one was chasing her. No one was threatening her child. She was safe. Hours passed. Later that night, she sat beside Mason's bed. He was awake now, a soft light over his head. "You made it," he said with a faint smile. "I should say that to you," she replied, her voice shaky. He looked over at the small window. Snow still fell outside, but in here it was warm, quiet. "You know what saved us?" he asked. Vera leaned forward. "What?" "You didn't give up." She looked down. "I almost did. So many times. But you didn't," he said. Vera's eyes glistened. "You saw me as more," she said. "No one's ever done that." Mason reached out weakly and took her hand. "You are more. You always were." Silence sat between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of meaning. Then came a soft knock. A young nurse stepped in. In her arms was Tiva, wrapped in a warm blanket, his little eyes open and blinking. Vera stood fast. "Tiva!" The boy reached out. She ran to him, picked him up, and held him close. His hand clutched her scarf. His head pressed to her chest. I was safe. He was whole. Mason smiled from the bed. "Told you he's strong?" Vera looked at him, tears on her cheeks. "He gets it from you." Later, Vera stepped out onto the balcony. The cold air brushed her face, but it didn't hurt anymore. Below, she saw humans and aliens working side by side, sharing food, carrying tools, fixing broken things together. It was not perfect, but it was different. She felt a small hand slip into hers. Tiva stood beside her, his eyes wide as he looked at the sky. "Are we staying here?" he asked softly. Vera nodded. "For now." He looked up. "And Mason?" "He'll stay too," she said with a smile. "If he wants to." The boy grinned. "I want him to." She pulled him close. Inside her chest, something new burned. Not fear, not anger, but warmth. Hope. The kind of fire that even the deepest cold can't kill. The kind that starts when someone, even just one person, chooses to care. And for Vera, that fire had a name. Human.